Welcome back to the Living in Oneness Summit, everyone. And I think, as you all know, today is Day 5. I'm Steve Farrell, the Worldwide Coordinating Director with Humanities Team, and I'm one of your hosts. And it's great to be with you. We have a large listening audience with us today. Over 15,000 have registered, and our registration is still climbing. So it's great to have you here with us. Thank you for making it a priority to be here. We have a fabulous day in store, and please do get comfortable. We're broadcasting live each day with at least 2 programs. Today there are 3, and we're talking about how we can come fully alive as part of the divine. That's the theme of the summit, coming fully alive as part of the divine. I want to just share a happy Mother's Day message. Happy Mother's Day to all of you and to your moms and your wives. And to all of the mothers listening in, we are honoring each of you. And we're going to be bringing in some Mother's Day messages during this hour, so it's going to be a lot of fun. I want to share as a reminder that we do have 48-hour free replays, and there's a $100 discount on the upgrade packages during this summit. Of course, these upgrade packages allow you to come back again and again to hear the wisdom that's been shared by over 30 of the speakers. And the upgrade packages include the MP3 links, the digital and written transcripts, and the CDs, not only for this year, but for last year as well. Of course, we had Panache Desai and Joan Borisenko and Ken Welber, Urban Laszlo with us last year. So take a look at that upgrade page if that interests you. Now, I'd like to introduce our guest for the hour. She is a special friend of Humanities Team. I know you're really going to enjoy her, Anakha Coman. She is the founder of the Awaken Leadership Institute, and she speaks, teaches, and consults with leaders and organizations worldwide, including Intel, Nike, OSHU, Save the Children, Heal Our World. She is the co-author of the Proof of 40-Day Program for Embodying Oneness and the author of the Law of Emergence, Living Your Soul's Blueprint for Brilliance and Remembering Oneness, and a collection of mindfulness meditations. She is a leader within the Global Oneness Movement in conjunction with the United Nations and Humanities Team, and helped to launch the Global Oneness Experiment as a worldwide research inquiry into collective coherence and nonlocal field intelligence. She is a certified expressive arts therapist, an ordained minister, and the co-founder of the Awaken Leadership Institute. And welcome to the program, Anakha Coman. Great to have you with us.
Thank you so much, Steve, and good morning, everyone. It's good to be here. Happy Mother's Day. I love this theme of coming fully alive. When you spoke those words, I'm just coming off a weekend with Richard Rudd and working with the Gene Keys about awakening our genius and awakening brilliance, our individual and our collective sacred genius. So when you said the sense of coming fully alive, I'm thinking about that capacity that we have to awaken to our full vitality, and in that is our full genius. So I'm excited to explore that theme through our conversation this morning.
Thank you. Yeah, well, it's so good to have you with us, Anakha. I know how much you can contribute to this conversation, and this truly is the invitation for the earth at this time, isn't it? For each of us to come fully alive as a part of the divine. And so we've been so excited about this summit, and Anakha, about having you because we've worked with you for many years now, and you've made so many contributions to this and books you've written. You're a speaker on this now in the area of conscious business. You're making great contributions. So we have a lot to talk about here, don't we?
Yeah, we do.
We can start however you like. We could start with a spiritual experience kind of dedicated to Mother's Day or a Mother's Day message that you might want to share. What might touches your heart here at this moment, Anakha?
Yeah, I would love to have us just drop into what we might call that garden of loving awareness together that we share, and drop into the body and drop into our hearts, and just spend a little time in that before we enter into this kind of collective inquiry and conversation today. So why don't we do that? And so to start with, I just have everyone just relax for a moment and closing your eyes or just softening that gaze as you bring your awareness into the center of your chest, into your heart. Let's go straight there into this beautiful vessel and instrument of love, into this heart of now. And as we do that, just taking in the inspiration, the breath of life. And allowing that breath to fully illumine and vitalize every single cell in our body. Breathing in to the heart, breathing into your belly, and letting both the heart and the belly and the body relax and become open and supple. When we think about mothers and the feminine, oftentimes we might think of that soft, loving awareness. So as you breathe, I just invite you to bring that tenderness and that loving awareness into your own experience right now, no matter what it is, whether it's a grief or a sorrow or a joy and a delight, just wrapping ourselves in this sense of loving awareness. This loving awareness that embraces every experience we could possibly have. And just relaxing into that embrace. As you breathe and soften, as you breathe and open that vessel of your heart, and breathe deeper, even further down into the lower belly, this place of what we might call the womb, or for men, the hara, this powerful place of creation. And allowing yourself to breathe all the way down into the womb, down into the hara, this sense of loving presence and awareness. There's this beautiful line in the Song of Songs that says, "Arise, my darling, my beautiful one, come with me. See, the winter has passed and the rains are over and gone. Flowers appear on the earth and the season of singing has come. The cooing of the doves is heard in our land. The fig tree forms its early fruit. The blossoming vines spread their fragrance. Arise and come, my darling, my beautiful one, come with me." And that's the invitation as we enter into this garden of our own bodies, this garden of the song that's blossoming within each of us, and connecting us also to the great Mother Earth. To just feel that call to return to your own sacred temple, to bathe in this loving awareness as you open the garden of your own heart, the blossoming of your own heart. Almost like a pomegranate opening to that juiciness and all of those seeds of life and possibility and potentiality that will live within this sacred vessel. Arise and come, my darling, awaken, spreading this fragrance of love all over the earth. So breathing that in and smiling inwardly to that garden of your own being. And then smiling and sending that fragrance of love to this garden of the planet that we share. The mother of all mothers. This nurturing presence. Smiling outwardly, smiling inwardly, and taking another several deep breaths. And with that intention today, that this conversation, this communion that we're in, be a fragrance that goes out to the whole garden of humanity, blossoming the flower of every heart in this one shared heart. And with that, just opening our eyes and diving in together into this inquiry, into this conversation today. And so it is. Amen.
Amen. Beautiful. Anakha, we'll just breathe into that here for a few seconds. Beautiful for the summit and for Mother's Day. So thank you, Anakha. Anakha, I thought I would start just with at the top, because you are this leader, author, speaker, devoted Sacred Heart mystic on this oneness path. You've been on this path for quite some time, and I wondered if you could share just what led you to this path, and then a little bit about your evolution on the path, and including successes and challenges. I think there's a lot in your own story that could guide people.
Well, I think, the one of the beautiful awarenesses that's arising in me right now is how this experience of oneness is hardwired in our DNA. It's not something outside of us that we have to strive for. It's an integral part of how we're wired, and it's more about awakening that inherent intelligence within us, within our DNA. And when I think back to what really started to arise as far as a longing was back into the garden. I was actually in Hawaii when I think this longing and this evolutionary impulse to activate within me and to experience what was maybe dormant and dormant within my cells, dormant within my consciousness, dormant within the DNA. And that was when I was in Hawaii and looking at this beautiful garden. I don't know if there's a more beautiful garden than Hawaii. And looking out at creation and feeling that creation is singing and in its full vitality and genius in this state of unity and interconnection and oneness. And I think I've shared this story before, that I somehow felt separate from that. And even in this moment, I can feel that tenderness in my own heart of that longing to feel that wholeness, to feel that vitality, to feel that rightness of belonging in a place. And I think also to do what we're talking about in this summit is to be fully alive, to actually be fully in our genius, whatever that is. It doesn't have to be something extravagant, but it has to be ours. And And so in that moment, as I was looking out at the water and the sun and the palm trees and the flowers, like all of creation really just alive with that yesence, saying yes to the essence of life. And I was feeling not that in my body or in my cells. I could perceive it, but I still felt separate from it. And that was really, I think I've said before, I made this very simple prayer, this truthful intent within my heart arose and said, Holy Spirit, bring me alive. Light my heart on fire so I can feel the aliveness of creation, of that oneness within me. And this is, I think, also where the difference between what we might be able to conceptualize with the mind as truth about oneness, and then sometimes the wide gap between what we know is true and what we're experiencing in our bodies in our day-to-day lives and relationships, and sometimes the pain of that gap. So I think that was what I was awakening to in that moment, was the gap and the longing, and then that seed, very much like the meditation this morning, that seed of truthful intent, of that desire, and making that prayer. And then not long after that, entering into a period of 40 days in nature, in the silence, on retreat, guided by my dear beloved friend Andrew Harvey. And then out of those 40 days, several years later, actually arose some of the seeds that were planted and cultivated in those 40 days became the proof, a 40-day journey into oneness. So that's a little bit of the longing. I know you asked a lot about challenges and successes, and when I hear that, it's really hard for me to even separate. Within each shadow, within each crisis, within each challenge, is always a pearl, is always a gift, and whatever agitation or irritation or loss or grief or challenge that arises, as I allow that, as I embrace that as best I can with loving awareness and trusting that life and the universe is intelligent and perfectly unfolding this sacred curriculum that's perfectly designed for my own soul's blossoming. So, the successes and challenges more feel like a woven experience, and even sometimes in the moment where I feel, or a period of my life where I feel I may have lost my way or the path isn't clear, it's still there and I'm still on it. I remember some of the last words my grandmother actually spoke to me, and when I think about her and I think about how she went into her own sacred death, I'm pretty sure she was a mystic on this planet, and one of the last things she said to me is that love is always there, even if it's behind the veil and we can't see it. It's always a constant presence. And so to deeply trust that as we meet whatever life is bringing to us, to fully embrace with that loving awareness. I think some of the most challenging times for me is when I'm in a place of judgment, where I'm judging myself, or I'm judging others, where I'm judging life itself and have a misperception that what's happening shouldn't be happening. And one of my teachers, Ajay Shanti, will say, if it's happening, if it's reality, then that's what's supposed to be happening. But as I resist that, as I judge life or judge myself as wrong or bad for having some experience, then that's where things get pretty painful. But that's where this morning, to me, really embracing every single experience we have in that softness, in that tenderness, and that loving awareness of the Divine Mother, then even when we're addressing something that's painful or challenging, or we're seeing a part of our collective sacred wound and our personal sacred wound, that we can wrap those experiences and allow them to unfold in a certain spaciousness that loving awareness brings.
Beautiful. Wow, there's so much you covered there. Anakha, in the beginning, just I think was so rich because I'm going to guess there are so many people that would say the same thing even now. Perhaps some of the listeners even today that would, this where you were talking about the Hawaii experience and you were experiencing this bird singing, this beauty and this majesty, but the feeling of being separate from that. But then this whole journey of with the retreat and the intention setting and the just all of this work that's been done now to come to this place where you see that of course we already are all one. We're not having to struggle to get back to anything. But so terrific. I sense that there's some real tools here, and that's what this summit is about: is providing tools for living in oneness. And I think often it starts with just this honesty, such as what you shared of, I don't feel one with that, but then there's this path that one can, there's this journey that is a beautiful journey where we can come back into oneness with that which we are. And your life experience just is such a wonderful example of that. So, gosh, thank you for starting us out there. Anakha, I'm thinking we could next go in a couple of different directions. One, you just came back from a program you shared that's very inspiring. The other is just, I know you've got very rich processes for living in oneness yourself. You've written, of course, so much about this. You speak about this. So talking about these daily processes, for living in connection. Shall we move into one of these two directions next?
Sure. Yeah. What's most on my mind, there's like two things that arose when you started into that, and one of the things that Richard Rudd said this weekend, who's an author of a beautiful system of work called the Gene Keys, which is unlocking the brilliance hidden within your DNA. And one of the things that he said that I often share is taking a moment to pause, many moments to pause, to actually slow our rhythm. And interesting enough, the very first day of my retreat and the first practice in the proof is called the Rhythm of Oneness. So this weekend we were really talking about rhythm and breath and space, and allowing the doing to arise from being, and noticing how much of our movements and our doing is actually arising challenging things. Is that we can believe in our hearts and our minds this experience of oneness, but if we still have fear in the body and in our nervous systems, then it's going to create somewhat of a separation and a lack of integration in how we actually can really embody oneness. And I know this has been true for me. Like from my really early childhood experiences, I've had a significant amount of trauma that's still been present in my own body. So even though at a level of heart and mind, I might have fully been awakened in this sense of oneness, there's been ways that I haven't been able to fully embody and integrate that in different areas of my life and different traumas, and not even just our individual traumas, but kind of our collective experience of our nervous systems not really being able to relax and to relax back into the deep connection of the rhythm of Mother Earth and of our heartbeat and of the pulsing, that sacred rhythm. And that oftentimes we're living separate from a natural rhythm from our own bodies and nervous systems. And it's really hard for us to experience oneness when we're moving outside of our natural rhythm, when we're moving away from our bodies. And so this very simple practice of pausing, and pausing often throughout the day, to pause, to slow ourselves, to take some breaths, to return to our body, to return to the heartbeat, and to remember each moment I like practices like that we can use throughout the day so that we don't become lost. And one of the things that Richard said this weekend was like that all of humanity is kind of adrift, but we don't have to. We don't have to go with that current. But to do that, it's like throughout the day to actually stop and center ourselves and connect. And the body and the breath are, beautiful tools that can bring us right back into the moment and right back into connection. And I think the more that we can pause and stay in that natural rhythm, the more amazing our lives will be, the more vitality, because vitality isn't found when we're moving outside of the moment and in a state of fear or distraction or anxiety. So that's one practice, is that sacred pause and that relaxing into that loving awareness and that spaciousness and allowing the doing of our lives to arise from a centeredness and a beingness. And to remember in many ways there's nowhere to go. And that the greatest epiphanies and insights that really would create breakthroughs in our relationships or in our work projects or in just how we're perceiving the world, those epiphanies come in the moments where we're connected and when we have a spaciousness to receive them.
Oh, wonderful. Another, I see this as just as a terrific tool. Like you say, as Richard, I guess, shared as part of your group retreat, that the collective is lost, but we don't have to be. And this sacred pause as a device, as a spiritual tool, pausing, returning to our breath, returning to our body, returning to the divine connection. Just wonderful. What a simple device, huh? I mean, with your 3-year-old or 9-year-old daughter, you could talk about a sacred pause, couldn't you?
Right. And, I think
just,
that's it, that it is simple. It is really simple. And then also not always easy when we kind of get going on this kind of automatic trance, automatic pilot. And I think that's really important what you just said when you said humanity can be adrift, but we don't have to. We can be a place and a sanctuary within the middle of it. But that means we have to cultivate that inner sanctuary so we can maintain that presence as we move out into culture and out into the world. And so those sacred pauses are so yummy and wonderful and just allowing. Like, this is what's beautiful about the pause and the breath and the body, is the body will remember itself. Again, oneness is our nature. It's inherent. It's in our DNA. It wants to activate. It wants to be what we're moving within. It's the most natural thing. And yet, in some ways, the way that we have evolved and some of our systems and structures actually are maybe not as much in harmony with that. And so that means that it's ours to bring, which is really beautiful. The other piece that I would really encourage people and has been so much a part of my own journey is to not be afraid of fear itself and to not be afraid of the shadow and to go into that wormhole of the shadow, of the constriction. So I think a lot of times on this path, people can be very hard on themselves, and I know we have these high expectations of, we're supposed to be a light in the world, and we're supposed to be these temples of oneness, and this is what spiritual looks like, and it can't look like our shadows of anxiety or arrogance or agitation or inauthenticity. Whatever it is, when those places within us are beckoning, when we're actually experiencing them in our lives, or when they're being reflected by sacred others, because we're all mirrors for each other and our own, both our brilliance and our shadows. But the beautiful thing about the shadow is that it does contain the gift, that there's really no way to unlock higher states of consciousness and sustain genius without descending down into those shadow places. But as we do that, we descend not by ourselves, but with that loving awareness, that embrace. So it's a real softness with which we approach those shadows, knowing that there are areas within us where we may have just become shut down or limited, or it hasn't been able to fully grow and blossom in the full developed state. So being willing to lovingly, tenderly, softly start to address those shadows, and to, as we mirror those for others, to be very tender and reverent, knowing that we're moving into really sacred territory. And that's another very important part of this work, is to actually remove the limitations, not even remove, and remove sounds too harsh even. It's actually really like the mother embracing the child unconditionally. And it's only through that really tender, loving embrace that those shadows can start to soften, and the structures and defense systems that are in place to cope with them can soften. And then they can reveal underneath those behaviors that we might see, they can reveal that kind of sacred wound, that sacred tenderness. And from that place, we can start to bring loving awareness right into the heart of those areas that are tender, that want to grow, that want to be healed, that want love. And it's in that place that the pearl is released. And we can move into more of that giftedness and more of that experience of oneness. So it's really encouraging people to be very, both courageous, but also very, very tender with themselves and with one another as we approach those areas.
Courageous and tender with our shadow work, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Anakha, let me share, we're now already over half of our hour is gone.
Wow.
So we do need to, at 25, we need to allow 5 minutes for wrap-up, because it's a hard stop, and people coming to the replays will miss a lot if we don't get it in. So we've got about, what do we have, about 20 minutes to talk. What I'd love to do with this 20 minutes is, one, I want to be sure that we get to what you've done at Intel in creating the Awaken Intel and then the Awaken Leadership Institute, because one of the key pillars for this Living in Oneness Summit, we say the 5 pillars for success, and one of those pillars is this whole area of the spiritually conscious workplace. And you've done really fabulous work there. If there's time, before we step into that, if there's any short process you could share, for the shadow work. I know this is another area where you've done deep inquiry, and you have developed your own processes for shadow work. Is there anything short that you could share before we step over into Intel and the Awaken Leadership Institute?
Are you asking like where to look or how to see or how to perceive the shadow? And I think our relationships are really some of the most important places where we're getting feedback. And it can also be kind of tenuous, because relationships can be filled with projection. And one of the things the shadow loves to do is to project out into the world and onto others. And so, one way that we can look at it and see the shadow is through our projections, what our kind of persistent irritations or judgments of other people are. Or it can also be a place where we're getting feedback from people that are most close to us. And, I think that the interesting thing that I would say about what my experience of the shadow is how it outward faces to the world. So the mask in the face of the shadow to the world will look a lot harsher and more defended and more problematic. But the way that we experience it internally is usually an area of deep woundedness or insecurity or not enoughness. And so that's part of why I say the tenderness, because a lot of times, like, let me share an example of one of mine that I've worked with lately, which is about the outward-facing picture is a sense of arrogance or better than. the inward-facing experience of that shadow is never good enough, and I need to be better just to even earn my seat at the table. I need to be more perfect or more together or contribute even more just to even earn my way. And it comes from this place in me that felt not good enough to belong in my family. But the way that it impacts others is like there's maybe not enough spaciousness for other people because I'm trying to be better than and good enough and earn my way and contribute even more. But as you can see how that would actually flower outwardly into experience where others might not feel as included, or it might be even looked at as like, oh, arrogance or know-it-all. But that's why it's so tender, because inside that isn't our experience at all. So I think sometimes when we get feedback from our relationships, people are seeing that defended aspect of the shadow. And then, but we know the soft territory of how it feels inwardly. And so if we can remember that when we look upon one another and look upon ourselves, that some of the most challenging behaviors in the people around us, the people that we love, our children, our spouses, our coworkers, that behind every single one of those defended areas or behaviors that is challenging for us is a very, very tender place that's trying to cope or survive or fit in or belong or feel good enough. So I think that would be my offering. It all comes back to tenderness again, this radical compassion with ourselves and with one another.
Oh, I love that. Yeah, gosh, what a beautiful description, first of just doing shadow inquiry into ourselves, and then this aspect of how we want to be so compassionate, so tender with this work, because, of course, the motive is as it always is, is a pure motive. Nobody's trying to hurt anybody.
Yes.
So,
yes.
yeah, beautiful. Anakha, wow, thank you. I'm glad we did go into that before shifting over to the workplace. Yes, with our remaining about 15 minutes, I would love to just talk about what you've done in with Intel and now with other organizations, with the Awaken Leadership Institute. How did you come to decide that you were going to go into the workplace with the spiritually conscious tools, and what kind of programs have you created? And if you can also leave tips for listeners, there's a lot of interest these days in creating a spiritually conscious office. Often the whole company isn't that way, but people want to just stay in coherence. They'd like to bring the energy of home to the office. So any ideas or suggestions you have for maintaining a spiritually conscious workplace?
Right. Well, that whole sense, Parker Palmer in his work has this quote that he talks about being divided no more, and so that we start to live the truth of who we are everywhere, and not having to check our authentic self at the door. And I think of this one man that had been at Intel for about 30 years, and at the end of the second 9-week mindfulness program, he said, I finally got it. He's like, I'm going to be authentic no matter what, and they'll either love it or not love it. I'll either move forward or not, but at least I won't be betraying myself day in, day out. And that there's nothing that creates more stress and anxiety and disruption than not being an authentic connection with who we really are. So, the program at Intel had its seed back in my 20s when I was an employee there, and just watching, once again, when we go back to this idea of individual and collective genius, I was seeing how much of that genius and possibility went untapped in those conference rooms and in the connection with other people. And that really sent me on my own inquiry into lots of different landscapes, my own healing and my learning about organizational psychology, and going to seminary and a deep dive into spiritual transformation and consciousness. And then And then it started to weave together, and it felt time to bring those two aspects strongly together. And I'll never forget that I was having lunch with a client at Nike, and he was looking at my CV, and he said, 10 years ago I never would have understood your background, this corporate background and this consciousness background. And he goes, but this is exactly what we need. And this happened to be a gentleman that was in Nike's corporate auditing and finance area, so it wasn't even somebody in human resources, but he really got it. And so there was a time where I started to receive this transmission around the 5 zones of corporate mindfulness and really how to bring this sacred pause that we talked about and even the shadow work, how to really bring awareness and greater connection and greater presence and vitality and creativity and insight into where we spend so much of our days. We spend so much time and energy in our workplace and with our work. And what if those experiences that we have while we're there could be some of the most illuminating, invigorating, connecting, creative experiences that we possibly could have? I know it's possible. I've seen it be true. And so really what I did was just take the first step. I had a friend that worked at Intel named Veda, and Kwa and I started meeting. I started sharing with him these 5 zones of corporate mindfulness, and we decided that we were just going to begin. And we got a conference room, and we started holding noon hour meditations and sessions where people could come in and experience what we talked about today, a place to come in and pause, to breathe, to reconnect, to remember, and to have a more meaningful connection with themselves and with one another, and then ultimately their creative work. And from that moment, from that small step, and I love that quote by Martin Luther King, you don't have to see the whole staircase. You just take that first step in faith. And so as we stepped in faith, that one step, really did reveal a most beautiful staircase of bringing mindfulness and awareness and presence and deep listening and emergence and creativity and insight into the Intel organization, and teamed up with a woman named Lindsay Van Drill. We co-created a program called Awake at Intel, and for the last several years we've been offering that to employees and managers and leaders throughout the company, from engineers to human resources to people around the globe. And that program really started as a seed and is really in a time of blossoming into something that will be a corporate-wide program. So that's been, just an amazing experience. That work is now actually being brought further into the world with a partnership that I've created with Sounds True. And we'll be, in just a couple weeks, be in Boulder actually videotaping and audio taping those teachings and audio meditations and putting together a whole program that corporations and individuals within corporations can take this Awake at Work 9-week mindfulness and corporate and employee innovation program. And also we're going to be having a coordinator and facilitator training so that people that want to start bringing this work into their organizations, into corporations, have this work that we've created accessible to them. And when I think about it, I think about freeing this work up almost like homeopathy, almost like planting seeds in corporations and in organizations all around the planet. And as we plant those seeds of consciousness and possibility, how they will actually take on a life of their own. And so it's my intention, our intention in this partnership with Sounds True to really make this broadly available to any organization or any coach or facilitator or person that really feels inspired to bring it into their company.
Wow, that sounds terrific. Yeah, well, that's an exciting new venture, and what a journey there, huh? From you started, you said in your 20s you worked at Intel, and
yes,
just noticing in the hallways of, gosh, there's so much here, a genius and in divine presence that just isn't being shared, and
Right.
kind of sitting with that for years and years and years, and then going into Intel, first with Qua and developing a mindfulness program, and then with this other woman, Awaken Intel, and now it's blossoming into this venture with Sounds True, where you're going to make these tape audio resources available for people to create a mindfulness and awaken consciousness in the workplace. So what an incredible journey, huh?
It is.
Are there first of all, Anakha, I'm guessing a lot of people will be interested in following the Sounds True venture. So let's be, in fact, even now, if you want, where could people go to or email you or website to learn more about that as it unfolds?
Right. Right now, Sounds True is getting ready to actually put together, they have a new program for the corporate world called Inside Work, and Awake at Work will be kind of their foundational program. That website is getting ready to launch here soon, but it's not up yet. So if you're interested in the Awake at Work program that's going to be offered through myself and Sounds True, you can email Drew Kramer, and it's DREWC at soundstrue.com. So drewc@soundstrue.com. And then he can get you added to the mailing list. We'll be having trainings for coaches and facilitators that would like to bring this work into their organization or company later this year in several different cities. So if you email him, you can be kept abreast of all of that as it unfolds.
Okay, fantastic. drewc@soundstrue.com. And Anakha, with our 8 minutes here or so that we have left, can we go through just or talk about, maybe just see what, feel into this and see what you're guided to do. But these processes for mindfulness in our office, for consciousness, for being awake, for being in touch with our brilliance and divinity itself, there are little things you could share that could help people feel more congruent in the workplace with the energy that they have in their home.
Yeah. I think several things come to mind, and one is, not waiting for permission to show up fully as who you are in whatever experience you're having, whether it be in the family or at work. That really, that authority lives within you to make a decision to live divided no more, and to show up with what I'd like to call that truthful intent, or that spark in your own heart of what do you want to contribute, just through your presence as you show up in any situation in your life. So I think part of it is really, I love this piece of interrogating your own soul about who are you really, and what truthful intent is really guiding you. What's that common thread that weaves through all of your life experiences, all of the different landscapes and places that you show up? What's that one thread, or what's that several strands that make up that truthful intent? And the more that you center yourself in that and are moved by that, you'll find that there'll be less division within your own being and more integration. So one example for me is, the thing that I go back to over and over again is this place of service from the heart. And, when I'm abiding in that place where I'm serving from this place of the heart and meeting people where they're at, then there's a real ease in that. And I think sometimes we can get caught up at work with competition and striving and trying to be successful and wanting to contribute these big things. And sometimes that takes us away from that more grounded, simple intention And as we rest there, I think we find more of our home, more of our integration, no matter where we are. And I think that leads me to the second place, which, a lot of our, Brené Brown says that we have an epidemic of shame in our culture in America, and it shows up very strongly in corporations. And shame is scarcity. Shame is never enough. And it starts within us of I'm not enough. And there isn't enough time, there isn't enough resources, there isn't enough, appreciation, there isn't enough acknowledgement. It can go a million different ways. And as soon as we're on that I'm not enough, there isn't enough mindset, we've already disconnected from our innate truth and brilliance. So I would just have people be really mindful of when you're being moved by that fear of I'm not enough, and when you're being moved by a deeper truthful intent of your soul, and what your soul is here to actually contribute and to, share as far as that fragrance that your soul has to offer into your work. So those two places of truthful intent and then being mindful of that shadow area that often can co-opt our presence and really cause a lot of stress and division and disintegration and distraction when we go into that place of I'm not enough, because the truth is I am. We are. and we don't need to compete for space to be who we are.
Yeah, I love that. Mindful intent or truthful intent and mindful of that shadow area.
Yeah.
Yes, with all of and then you led us through an experience a little earlier that was so beautiful there. I love it. And one of the things you've touched on here as you've talked, Anakha, is just this whole aspect of authenticity, even where you were talking about really finding that one common thread that runs through your life.
Yeah.
It's really getting in touch with our own soul's presence, who we really are. And isn't it true that if we get in touch with that and express that, then, that's how we create our heaven on earth. And when we want to cover it up or put a mask on it or say, no, this isn't, but I'm a guy and being loving and whatever, I'm just using an example here, this isn't socially acceptable, so no, I need to sort of cover this up. I'm going to be more socially acceptable in the way I express. That's how we create our hell on earth, isn't it? By covering up who we really are. So this aspect of really coming into alignment with coherence with who we really are and just being that, your very best self, your most expressive self of what that is. And, that's how we come alive. And people are attracted to us because they can see we're doing that with our life and with ourself, right?
Right.
And then we bring in the aspect of oneness of just, and oneness is pure God energy. It is the divine. It's the one present. We're all droplets, in this ocean called God, and where we're really in touch with that, the beauty of that, the loving essence of that, which is who we are. Then, it can just bring us to life. It can, it animates us anyway, but it can consciously animate us. And so anyway, these are some of the places that my mind goes through as I hear you share these things. But gosh, so many tools here, Anakha. Oh my goodness. And more than ever before, we've done so many things over the years, but I feel like you really brought through you from the time you were a little girl with some of these profound experiences, these things that have happened, and then how this journey was created out of that into these things. Now it's almost like roses blossoming, right, in a garden, and all of these beautiful things.
It is, and I think that's the encouragement, is to start and take that step and plant that seed, and everything with as much loving awareness, even where we're afraid, even where we know we're covering up and we're hiding. Love that too, and meet that with loving awareness. Everything, I think that's the essence of Divine Mother, maybe maybe with our human mothers we didn't all experience that, or some of us did, or we had a mixture. But the Divine Mother, that, oh my gosh, ever present loving awareness is available to us all every single second. And as we connect into that loving awareness, that Divine Mother presence, to hold us, to hold our lives, I mean, she is holding us. She is holding our lives. She is the space, that loving awareness, spaciousness, that great womb in which all of this is unfolding. And so to feel her nourishment and her unwavering presence, and to allow ourselves in these times to really take that in. And then our lives can have a lot more lift and a lot more buoyancy, even in the challenging areas. And even when we're showing up and we're risking and we're terrified, there's a part of me that has felt that experience as I move into this sounds true experience and thinking, oh, my face and voice all over the world, and am I good enough, and is this going to be okay, and will I do a good job, and all of that. And then just relaxing back in and knowing that the Divine Presence is what's moving us, and the Divine Presence is what will order all of that. And it is more of a relaxing and a deepest surrendering of any of that anxiety of efforting or striving or thinking that we're separate from that beauty and that love and that goodness that you spoke of at the beginning of this call. So thank you so much for just being so gracious with your invitation to be with all of you today. And I'm hoping that some of the pieces of what were shared today actually touch you and maybe give you a little bit different sense of your own journey right now. And happy Mother's Day. I mean, we're all mothers right now. We're all birthing ourselves and this next great sacred genius that we're birthing ourselves into and from. So thank you, Steve.
Thank you, Anakha. I'm going to wait till the very end for all the major thank yous, but just remember, I want to recall AnakhaComan.com is where you can go to learn more about Anakha and her programs. And I want to thank so much all of the listeners who have been part of this summit. You can go to the livinginone.com site for those 48-hour free replays if you're not here live and you want to listen to the program. And also during the summit through Sunday next week, we have this $100 discount on the upgrades that allow you to listen again and again to some of the incredible truths such as what Anakha shared during this hour, these amazing spiritual tools that you can come back to and share with friends and family. And it does include these MP3s, the digital and written transcripts, and the CDs for this year's program and for last year's program that had so many amazing people in it, like Panache Desai and Kim Wilber. I want to also share, I want to now give you a proper thank you here, Anakha. Anakha Coman, again, so amazing, so much insight, and just sharing with her personal stories and how she's gone from where she was feeling separate from oneness, which I think so many people can relate to here where she's now helping people all over the world create a spiritually conscious life and spiritually conscious workplace. And so amazing. I think that's everybody's invitation. It's all of our invitation to grow in the fullness of that. Thank you, Anakha. And I want to thank my colleagues that are here with me, Dee Meyer, a co-host, Nanette Kennedy, one of the key leaders in Humanities team, Carrie Beach, and my other colleagues who helped to make this program possible. I want to thank all of you listeners for being here on Mother's Day with us. Thanks for prioritizing time to talk about how we can come fully alive as a part of the divine, and certainly that's our invitation today. I want to share who is next up on the program. It's Hank Queen. He's a senior Boeing executive who now consults with people and organizations on a conscious business workplace. That program starts in about 30 minutes, so do come back for that program. John Thomas, who's one of the co-hosts of the program, will be interviewing Hank Queen. So we look forward to seeing you in about 30 minutes. And everybody have a fabulous Mother's Day. Anakha, thank you, and we'll certainly be talking to you again soon. So take care, everybody.
Thank you.
And lots of love.